New Zealanders. I commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I take a call on behalf of New Zealand First with the New Zealand International Convention Centre Bill, third reading, and I would like to perhaps provide a historical overview of how this whole piece of legislation has got to the House today. Initially, we were advised that Auckland, the largest city in New Zealand, required a larger convention centre than it already had. The existing one was located at Sky City, built back in the early 2000s, but that if Auckland was to secure much larger international conferences and conventions, it would need a considerably larger venue. Early in the National Government's term of 2008, the government sought expressions of interest for building a larger convention centre. 5 organisations tendered for the new convention centre. 4 were declined. Of the 4, one was Ngāti Whātua, the local iwi in Auckland, who were prepared to put forward land holdings in the Auckland area controlled by Ngāti Whātua in the downtown area, adjacent to the historic railway station and to the large Vector Arena, which seats 12,000 people, which could have been perhaps a wonderful link to Vector Arena and the historic railway station to provide a wonderful international centre on local iwi land. Again, we hear this talk about government working with iwi, working with the Māori Party. That particular proposal, which would have brought in major landholders in Auckland, was dismissed. A second submission was made by the Public Infrastructure Partners Fund, owned by Morrison & Co., which had a major cornerstone investor being the New Zealand Superannuation Fund. That organisation again wanted to invest significant funds into the Auckland Convention Centre and Exhibition Centre, and they were turned down. Instead, at the time, the Public Infrastructure Partners Fund said that they were disappointed, they had to take their money elsewhere, and they, a New Zealand fund with New Zealand superannuation funds owned by New Zealanders, invested in the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre. So what a shame, Mr. Speaker, that New Zealand superannuation funds have ended up going offshore to support the funding of the Melbourne Convention Centre, while those very same New Zealand superannuation funds have not stayed in this country for perpetuity, for ongoing funding from that. The Auditor-General then did a report in February 2013 as a result of concerns being brought to the Auditor-General's attention over the process when Sky City was awarded the tender. The Auditor-General concluded that Sky City got special treatment on talks around the International Convention Centre after the Prime Minister personally intervened and had meetings with Sky City. The Auditor-General's office determined that Sky City were treated very differently to others tendering for the contract. The report concluded and stated Mr. Key personally penned his note on the briefing paper calling a halt to wider business consideration being prepared and, quote, we should close off the Sky City angle, wrote John Key in his own handwriting on the notes given to Cabinet. Mr. Key was personally briefed on options for the Convention Centre at a dinner with Sky City board members and executives on the 4th of November 2009. On the same day as Mr. Key's dinner with Sky City, a Treasury official warned officials about process and probity. The same warning was conveyed to Mr. Key in a briefing note on November the 12th, 2009. The Auditor-General found a range of deficiencies in the advice that the Ministry provided and the steps that officials and ministers took leading up to that decision. And I quote the Auditor-General, "The quality of support that was provided fell short of what we would have expected from the lead government agency on commercial and procurement matters." And secondly, the Auditor-General stated there were inappropriate considerations, and further that there were connections between political and business leaders. This is the report from the Auditor-General, Mr. Smith, so please don't deny it, or you are denying a report of the Auditor-General. Further, Mr. Speaker, Treasury, in its report, says Treasury made it clear that they were not convinced by the cost-benefit analysis presented by ministers. Treasury expressed strong concerns that private benefits to Sky City will exceed public benefits to New Zealanders. And I'm quoting that from Treasury reports. They said there were strong concerns that private benefits to Sky City will exceed public benefits to New Zealanders. Mr Speaker, John Key personally cut a backroom deal for Sky City to build a $350 million convention centre in exchange for the casino getting another 230 pokie machines with a 35-year licence until 2048. Can you imagine anyone in this country getting such a sweet deal as to give a licence through until 2048 with basically carte blanche from this Parliament? It increases the number of pokies from 1,647 to 1,877 pokies. This is a prime example of the government cuddling up to its buddies and selling off our laws to the highest bidder while ignoring the social cost of problem gambling. It makes you wonder what other dubious deals to sell off the country to foreign investors are being hatched by Mr Key. Official party donation returns also show that United Future and John Banks, during his 2010 Auckland mayoralty, both received funding from Sky City, both United Future and John Banks. The National Party received $60,000 from Sky City management in 2005, while United Future received $12,000 in the same year. These three parties which received donations from Sky City are the same ones that today can ensure that this John Key deal gets a majority in this Parliament today. The very same people who have received funds from Sky City will be voting on and putting this bill through today. The National Party has also pumped money into Sky City, which it has used as a venue for party events. The National Party used Sky City for its campaign launch in 2005, and it was the election night headquarters for John Key in both 2008 and 2011. And there have been many other meetings of the National Party held at Sky City. And one, again, would question how much money passed hands to have access to those venues, or were they at favourable buddy rates to secure the goodwill of both sides. Mr Speaker, it's also disappointing, having come from local government, where local government throughout New Zealand has tried to put a lid on the pokie machines that are affecting our society, which is one of the major concerns in many communities. And throughout New Zealand, and I was looking today at some of the different council policies, but all over New Zealand, local authorities have sinking lid policies, including the Auckland Council, the Nelson City Council, Hamilton City Council, Christchurch City Council, Hastings District Council, Nelson City Council, and many more. Mr Speaker, it is interesting that those communities do receive returns from those pokie machines, but it is interesting at the same time that in the community, those gaming trusts get 37% of the proceeds from those gaming machines in their communities back to the community, 37%. By contrast, the pokie machines in Sky City only return 2.5% of their takings in the way of community grants. That is a shocker. So while Mr Key says, oh, well, don't worry, because on one hand, pokie machines are reducing around New Zealand in different communities and different authorities, while we're giving out another 230 in Sky City, they are not the equivalent of 230 machines, because the funds going back to the community are only 2.5% from Sky City, not 37% that go back in places all over New Zealand. That is another shocking result of this John Key deal. Mr Speaker, New Zealand First does not support this. We think this is an absolute, what we call a John Key, Sean Key deal, and this will go down in the annals of history in terms of being one of the sleaziest deals that this Parliament has ever put legislation through on, and forever and a day the likes of Nick Smith and others of his ilk will remember the day that they sold out New Zealand law and sold out the principles of this Parliament in order to do deals with their mates and sell out to the gambling industry.
Mark Mitchell.
Speaker, I'll just take